Welcome back to Unsolicited Feedback, the podcast where we cut through the noise, skip the corporate jargon, and get real about what actually drives results. Because let's be honest, hope is not a business strategy. I'm your host, Chuck Knabusch, the operations guy. After 40 plus years across the military, corporate America, and now entrepreneurship, I've seen what works, what breaks, and why leadership, planning, and execution are the great separators between average and exceptional results. As you're catching the replay, send your thoughts or challenges directly to me at chuck@13ten.com, chuck@13ten.com. As your time matters, let's jump straight into today's topic. Why was there a crowbar in the cell? How small workarounds expose big leadership failures. Let me start with a question that sounds absurd until you've lived it. Why would a production cell ever need a crowbar? Not a mallet, not a torque wrench, not a calibrated adjustment tool. A crowbar. This wasn't a one-off. It wasn't a prank. It certainly wasn't sabotage. It was normal. And that's the part that should make every leader in operations deeply uncomfortable. Years ago, I was part of an organization that ran serious quarterly business reviews. Yeah, not the watered down, slide heavy kind. These were the real thing. 2 full days, senior corporate executives on site, deep dives into operations, financials, continuous improvement, safety, quality, and of course, plant walkthroughs. Executives didn't just listen to PowerPoint. They went to the floor. They asked questions. They looked. They touched. They noticed things. Which is exactly how this story begins. Late in the day, long after the slides were closed, our senior VP of operations started walking the cells. This wasn't a spreadsheet executive. This was a guy who'd come up through the ranks. He understood plants. He understood flow. He understood what normal looks like. And in one of the production cells, he saw something odd. A crowbar. Just sitting there. He paused. He picked it up. He looked around. Then he did what good operators do. He checked another cell. Found another crowbar. Then another. By the time he finished that section of the plant, it was clear. This wasn't an accident. This was a pattern. Now here's the important detail. The shift had ended. The plant was mostly down. There was no chaos, no fire, no breakdown, which meant something even worse. This had become standard work. And at the moment, every leader in the room felt the same thing. Embarrassment, confusion, and the creeping realization that we were about to learn something we didn't want to know. The next morning, we were back early, not to defend, not to explain, but to understand. What we uncovered had nothing to do with crowbars and everything to do with leadership. Here's the biggest problem. Workarounds become invisible, and then they become normal. Let's be clear about the real problem here. The problem wasn't the crowbar. The problem was a system that quietly allowed poor execution to be masked instead of fixed. This is one of the most dangerous failure modes in operation. When people solve problems for the system instead of the system solving problems for the people. Workarounds are seductive. They feel productive. They feel responsible. They keep the line running. And that's exactly why they're so dangerous. In our case, here's what we found. Certain frame and mechanism assemblies weren't fitting smoothly. Instead of stopping and fixing the root cause, assemblies were rushed. Alignment became sloppy. Precision was sacrificed for speed. So when things didn't fit, someone went to the MRO, asked for a crowbar, and made it work. And once one cell did it, others followed. Here's the kicker. The MRO office stocked crowbars. Let that sink in. Not because they wanted unsafe behavior, but because the system had trained them that this was needed. The organization had quietly said, we know things don't fit right. We know it's not ideal, but keep it moving. No memo, no announcement, just reinforcement through silence. The second problem, layered on top of this, leadership reviews that unintentionally reward appearance over reality. Because during those quarterly reviews, the metrics looked fine, the output was acceptable, issues were handled, the system was working, as long as no one looked too closely. The biggest symptom? They're experiencing quiet heroics on the floor. And here's how this shows up in real organizations. Not with crowbars, but with extra force. Feel instead of specs. Tribal knowledge. Informal tricks. Just do it this way. You'll hear things like, it's just how this machine is. You gotta finesse it. Don't worry, we've got a way. Leaders often mistake this for engagement. It's not. It's compensating behavior. In our case, the symptom wasn't visible until an experienced operator noticed something that didn't belong. But the real symptom had been there for months. Cells needing adjustment, variation between operators, increasing physical effort, risk creeping into routine work, and no one escalated it. Why? Because escalation would slow things down. And slowing things down was the real sin. According to multiple manufacturing safety and quality studies, over 70% of serious safety incidents are preceded by repeated normal deviations. Most quality escapes originate from undocumented workarounds. High-performing plants don't eliminate problems faster. They expose them faster. The presence of workarounds isn't a sign of failure. The tolerance of them is. So what do most people try to do to fix it? Well, they ban the tool, they write a rule, or yell a little louder. Once leadership sees something like this, the instinctive response is predictable. You've seen it. Maybe you've done it. Reaction number one, get rid of the crowbars, which we did. We removed them from every cell, removed them from the MRO office, made it physically impossible to repeat the behavior. Was that necessary? Yes. Sufficient? Absolutely not. Reaction number two, let's reinforce the rule. Somebody says, no tools allowed unless approved. Or, this isn't how we do things. So a rule is written, a memo is sent, a meeting is held, and everyone nods. Reaction number three, restrain the operators. Because clearly the thinking goes, the people closest to the work must be the issue. So let's do refresher training, proper assembly steps, emphasis on care and precision. All well-intentioned, all incomplete. Why this feels right but isn't? These actions address the artifact, not the system. They remove the evidence without fixing the conditions that made the evidence necessary. Which leads us to the hard part. Why that solution rarely works. Because the system still rewards speed over precision. Let's talk about why crowbars showed up in the first place. Not because people were careless, not because they were reckless, but because the system punished stopping more than it punished forcing. Ask yourself this. What happens when a line stops? Who feels it first? Who gets the call? Who gets questioned? But now ask, what happens when somebody quietly makes it work? Exactly. In our case, when we dug a little deeper, the truth was uncomfortable. Assemblies required precision we weren't allowing time for. Pressure for output created sloppiness. Sloppiness created misalignment. Misalignment created force. Force required tools that should never have been there. The crowbar wasn't the failure. It was the signal. Here's a counterintuitive insight. High-pressure environments don't eliminate problems. They drive them underground. And once they're underground, they don't show up in dashboards. They don't appear in meetings. They only surface when something breaks or somebody gets hurt. It's a leadership blind spot. Here's the brutal truth. Every workaround is a leadership failure that someone else is absorbing. And they're usually absorbing it with their bodies, judgment, stress, pride, until eventually they can't. So here's one thing that actually moves the needle. Design the system so stopping is safer than forcing. Here's what actually changed things for us. Not rules, not punishment, not slogans. We redesigned the work. Let me say that again. We redesigned the work. Step one, we slowed down on purpose. We acknowledge something leaders hate to say. We're moving too fast to do this correctly. So we revised the tact assumptions, adjusted the cycle expectations, allowed time for precision instead of recovery. Output dipped briefly, then stabilized, then improved. Step two, we fixed the assembly process. Instead of asking people to be more careful, we improved fixturing, reduced variability, eliminated ambiguity in the alignment, which ultimately meant no force was required. No heroics were needed. No crowbars anywhere. Step three, we changed what we rewarded. Here's the real lever. We stopped praising making it work, pushing through, not stopping the line, and started praising escalation, precision, stopping to fix the root causes. Not with posters, but with behavior. The leadership test. Here's the test I give leaders now. If someone stops the line today to do it right, what happens to them? If the answer isn't they're supported, then you're quietly stocking crowbars somewhere in your system. We never found another crowbar, not because we banned them, but because we removed the need for them. And that's the difference between managing behavior and leading systems. So if you're a leader watching this, ask yourself, where are people compensating for bad design? What tools exist that shouldn't? What quiet heroics are masking real problems? Because somewhere in your operation, there's a crowbar. I know it. And it's not the tool that worries me. It's what made it necessary. If this hits close to home, share it with your team. Walk your floor differently tomorrow and ask one dangerous question. What are we forcing that shouldn't require force? That's where real improvement starts. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Unsolicited Feedback. Thanks for joining me, but don't just nod along. Apply something from today's conversation, because results don't show up just from listening. They show up because you did something. Even one small action this week will move the needle farther than a month of good intentions. If you want to go deeper, scan the QR code or schedule a 30-minute strategy chat. I'd love to hear how you're using planning, leadership, and execution to make sure hope never becomes your business strategy. Drop a comment and like the episode. I'm Chuck Knabusch. Until next time, stay focused, stay disciplined, and don't you dare rely on hope.